To get back to work and possibly get home and take care of business, as in Elvis Presley taking care of business. I think the minority leader's like me. She's ready to go home too. All right, we're waiting on the folders to get here, but Senator Frank Ginn, would you come up and pick up where we left off yesterday, and if you need somebody to come up to help you, that's fine too. We're waiting for the folders to get here so we can pass those out, and we will begin momentarily. But
John Watson and Joe Brown that also join me at the podium, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. Because as they say, I'm not a lawyer and don't pretend to be, but I have to say something.
Is it a good deal?
It's a good deal.
No, that's probably not. Probably not.
And for our members that weren't here yesterday, I'll be glad to go back over anything that you want me to, or kind of hit some highlights and whatever you need to, but
do a real quick overview of the bill so Senators Lucas and Dolezal will know where we are. So you don't go through it line for line, but just do a outline.
Basically, the goal of the bill is to bring down the cost of housing. So we've got a lot of people coming to Georgia to live, and we want to do it in a way that lowers that cost, but also protects the other residents that are already here. And so for me, you've dealt with and seen impact fees and those kind of things. Well, what this bill will actually do is, somebody wants to do a community development district. They work through their local government and all of its local control, and that's one of the things that for me is very important, that they have to come under the auspices of the city or county, or both if they're in unincorporated and incorporated, but they'd work through their local government, follow all the same zoning rules and all the things there. But they are going to go to the bond market to borrow the money to do this development. And that development is going to be paid for on an assessment on their tax bill. So that basically, instead of having to come up with today, where a developer goes out and develops infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, schools, fire department, anything else that they're going to do, they would go in to this community development district. The pretty high level. That's why I've got not one but two attorneys here. That'll work with me on this. But what we're trying to do is bring down the cost of that development, so that instead of today, where a developer goes in and puts all his money at risk to do a development, and that comes out in the lot sales. I had the Athens Home Builders Association here last week. They were telling me the typical lot price is $100,000 to $120,000 in their market, and that's for an empty lot, making the purchase price of a house just really unaffordable. What this will do is build all that infrastructure. Instead of paying for it right on the front end, they're going to pay through a 30-year bond or something along those lines, in a much better rate, because it's a tax assessment. And that's where, for me, I can go through the line items of the bill, but I actually would rather John or Joe to kind of hit some highlights on it, and they could address that.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. What number are you? Number 10, you have the floor.
These community development districts, are you creating a new mechanism to do this? Is that what the structure of the bill is?
Yes, sir.
What's the process by which the debt gets serviced?
The debt gets serviced if a local government is petitioned by a landowner, developer, owner of property, typically larger scale, almost always larger scale in nature. They petition local government. If the petition is successful, that will cover a geographic area. They will work with that community to determine what the plat is in terms of available lots. They then will have an assessment allocation on a per lot basis. That then will be determined by the capital markets, the debt markets in specific, to determine if that pencils to be blunt.
And so then the future property owners have a line item on their taxes.
That's
So it's essentially okay.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And it is, the important thing, and the reason why we need a constitutional amendment, asking for a constitutional amendment is, one, it does create a political subdivision, but secondly, and most importantly, it severs completely any opportunity for that indebtedness to get to the local tax digest. It says specifically in the Constitution and in the bill clearly that, again, only that underwriting of that lot assessment can go to pay back that revenue stream. You can never touch the local tax digest.
You said it's for larger subdivisions. What in the bill dictates that?
Economic feasibility will be the thing, because the cost of issuing bonds, as you know, is pretty expensive. You're not going to do this for a 50-lot subdivision. This is going to be, probably a mixed use. You probably see, when somebody's developing a piece of property, you probably see a little bit of commercial stuff, and there'll be other things that are built in there, the grocery stores or whatever. But they are sold off in that property. But when you look, because of the size of a project like this, it's been used quite extensively in Florida, and I'll let Joe attest to some of those.
If I could just say one other word, that the allocation of debt, it can only go to public infrastructure, and that is public infrastructure that will not be borne by the local government, can be all the way from water, sewer, bridges to include schools, fire, police, if that is something that the local government negotiates. But again, this debt can only go to public facilities, public infrastructure that ultimately over time is turned over to the local government free of charge.
Mr. Watson, pull that microphone over closer when you're
I'm sorry,
speaking.
later.
Sorry. Whichever one talks, just grab the mic so we want to get it on record.
You want to comment on the board?
Sure. As to Senator DeGane's comments,
Because senators weren't here, Joe Brown, Kutak Rock, out of Tallahassee, Florida, however, is undergraduate Georgia Law School, so has some credentials on that standpoint, but that's who we have here.
and Senator DeGane was correct that it's really a market function, really the dollars and cents that determines how small a district could get. I mean, typically you need, 250 plus at least lots for it to make any sense. You have to have enough infrastructure need too, right? That's the whole purpose, is that you're building a big enough new development, then it's creating a big enough need for additional infrastructure that it makes sense to use the municipal bond market as a way to finance those improvements. So there is a size below which it just makes no sense for anyone to spend the time or money to try and use this tool. But there's no specific limit in the bill. That's just a function of the nature of development and the cost to create and operate a district like this.
When you look at the cost savings, it's to not lower that initial price into somebody that's trying to get into a home market. They're paying for that over, or whoever's living in there is going to pay for that over the next 30 years is typically how long the bonds will be issued for. And that's where, I think it's one way that we can help bring in that more affordable housing for people in Georgia.
Isn't it also true?
I've never seen a mixed-use development, though. I think about the Battery, I think about Avalon, I think about Atlantic Station. None of those are affordable housing. They're all the Halcyon in my district. They're all the most premium places, to the extent that they're usually multifamily. I mean, Avalon has multifamily at $5,000 a month, and the cheapest single-family home in there is $2 million. So I haven't yet. Maybe you can point me to some, but I have not, in this state at least, seen any affordable housing that's been part of mixed-use development.
You see a range across the board. So you do see more affordable developments that use districts. And
I'm talking about here in the state.
Here in the state.
Can you point me to one?
We don't
No,
have
well,
community development
that's-
districts right now.
I think that's the point of the bill, is to provide something that can address that broader range, in particular on the residential housing side. There are some special districts in Georgia, like community improvement districts, which are more focused on already urbanized, developed, and typically commercial areas that they exist to serve. That doesn't really address this need, and this is really addressed towards housing and residential developments. There may be some commercial, but that's not the focus. The focus is on really residential. That's what this is designed to address.
Senator, there's, Chairman, excuse me, are you familiar, if I could, I don't know if I can ask a question.
You can't, go ahead, it's okay. This is just a subcommittee.
Are you familiar with the villages?
I am.
That is a price point beginning in the 200s, and that's a.
Can you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry, Senator, I'm sorry.
The lawyer's in the room.
Yeah,
watching
sorry.
us.
So the concept, again, is for larger scale greenfield development that begins with residential rooftops and over time most likely has a degree of whether it be medical office building, accounting, retail that then supports the rooftops. And in this scenario, in particular in Florida and other examples, you have price points, of course, like many developments that start on one end of the spectrum and move up.
So walk me through the school thing. Let's say you're gonna build the villages here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do recognize that one difference between I'm in the fastest growing county in the state. So you and I've never met, so just so you know, I'm in a development centric area. Everything is small. Maybe 1,000 homes would be the biggest, and we haven't seen 1,000 home development in my area in a long time. I know that Florida does tend to have these more large scale, more master plan communities. That may or may not be a function of this. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that go into that. So, but let's just say that you're going to build a 3,000 home development using this mechanism. What would be the tool by which you're going to build a middle school, high school? Somebody mentioned schools. So walk me through forget the roads piece. I can conceptualize that. Walk me through how this bill would deal with the infrastructure as it relates to schools.
Well, for schools in particular and some of the other more specialized types of infrastructure, so not like the bread and butter stuff of sewer, water, roads, all that would have to be by agreement with the general purpose local governmental entities, school boards, whoever has authority over that. So it would be by direct agreement. The district just doesn't go out and build things, right? It doesn't have eminent domain authority. It doesn't own any property to start out. All of that happens by agreement with the interested parties. So that is how that would work, and the details would just determine on, the specifics of the circumstances you were looking at, and the negotiation that happens between the general purpose local governments and the developer with respect to the development
forms the
itself,
district?
the entitlements. The landowner does, so the developer initially.
So I own 500 acres. I get to say I'm now forming a community development district.
You get to petition the general purpose local government for them to consider whether to
But that would
authorize
not
the
be the
creation.
school system. So how do the schools get looped into this piece? It gets formed by the county or the city.
Or the city, yes, sir.
They then, how can the schools, I guess here's my question, let me make this better. High school's $100 million now in the state of Georgia. You're gonna build a 5,000 home development that's gonna require a new high school. How can the schools force the community development district to construct the high school to service the kids that are going to come in as a result of that development?
So this bill doesn't address the development approval and entitlement process or concurrency requirements, right? So as you have new developments coming online, they're creating demand on infrastructure, including infrastructure like schools. So as that process is being sorted out with the developer, that it would be where you would determine what is going to be necessary in order for that development to go forward. And after that's determined, the district is there as a tool to help fund those improvements. So if a new gigantic community is on the horizon, and you're going to need a new elementary school or a fire station or a police station, when those things are determined, that gets determined, and then the district only later comes into the picture when that's established and is there as a funding mechanism and maintenance mechanism to help contribute towards the construction of those improvements.
And I can tell you how that's going to work in reality. Is the rest of the taxpayers in that community are going to be talking to their local elected officials, say, hey, they're talking about building this development. We don't want to have to build a new school because they want to do this development. So they're going to be talking to their local elected officials, city or county or whoever, and said, look, they need to build their own school. They need to come up with the funding for this. And that's where, for me, it's all about local control on this.
I get that, but they get the entitlement from the county. The county forms the community development district. What leverage does the school system have to say, rather than you bonding money to pay for all the county infrastructure, the roads, the sewer, whatever else, we are going to require you to use some of your bonding capacity to pay for a school? What leverage does the local board of education have to force the construction of the school, as opposed to the county just saying, great, we'd love for you to pay for the roads, we'd love for you to pay for whatever else is gonna get that off of our M&O expenditure. What leverage does the school system have?
So to the extent there's involvement in the development, entitlement, and approval process, that's where any of that would come into effect.
But the school system has no authority in the entitlement process.
Well, then it would be a function of the counties or the cities through the approval process, identifying those needs and on the front end with the developer saying these are the things that are going to need to happen for this development to go forward.
Senator, there's nothing that in this statute that specifically describes and stipulates that the school systems have a seat at the table. I think that's where your head is.
I've seen a scenario in which the county sucks up all of the benefit and the schools are left holding the bag. And in my district right now, the schools are already have no voice in the zoning decisions that are being made, but they have to pick up all of the expense of the decisions of county commissioners. And so if the county or city has the ability to form this, I see a direct path for it to really benefit them because they don't need to pay for, I guess, would they have to pay for the maintenance of the infrastructure starting in year 6, 5, 7, or is it going to be
Not
pushed
until the
out to
bonds are
30?
defeased and if the district
Here's my last
ceases.
question. I know I'm monopolizing this.
Good questions. Go ahead.
I assume the bonds are sold on the credit rating of the county or the city.
No, they're sold purely based on the security within the district, which is just basically the underlying dirt. That's what they're sold on, and they don't have the same credit rating initially that a city or county bond would have. In fact, and what you see over time is as initial bonds are issued at a certain interest rate, which is definitely advantageous and more affordable than getting a private loan for the developer, which helps save and lower some of those costs. As the community is constructed and homes are becoming vertical, you'll actually see it go out and be refinanced at lower rates because you now have an actual community, not just a piece of dirt. But the rating is entirely based on what is happening inside the district. It does not rely at all on the city or county.
Florida? Sorry, I just was trying to go quick. What happened to these in Florida in 2008 when they took out bond debt in 2007? 2008 happens, nothing's being constructed, the bond payments are due, there's no tax base to pay for it. What happened? Were these in place in Florida at that time?
Yes, absolutely. And
how many of them defaulted?
Right. Well, I don't know exact numbers on defaults. There were certainly a number that defaulted and a number that I was personally involved with that defaulted. And what happens at that point is the district has to step in and enforce its security, which is the assessment lien. And what you see are the developers. I mean, there were a number of developers in particular projects that went belly up. But the underlying security is that dirt, and you have institutional bondholders. The people that are buying these bonds are not Mr. and Ms. Smith down the road. It's the Oppenheimers of the world, and they have a vested interest in that community turning around. So the district is required, has an agreement, a trust indenture with the bondholders. They have to step in and enforce that security. They take control of the property. They have to work with the bondholders to try and turn the project around. Normally what you end up seeing happen is a workout with the bondholders. Typically the bondholders, because they're the ones that are providing the money, end up taking a haircut in those kind of situations. But you see those projects turn around. So every single project that I was involved in, and I was doing this stuff in Florida at that time, has turned around and is now, either fully developed or nearly developed and a successful community with people living there. So it proved to be, in my opinion, a very secure way for that scenario to be addressed as compared to, say, maybe a community that just had an HOA and a developer went defunct.
The thing that I like the best about it, Senator, is it protects the rest of the community. It's kind of an arm's length deal that the other people in that community aren't getting burdened with that infrastructure and things that didn't get built or didn't work. So that's where, for me, it protects the remainder of the community and kind of makes this project stand on its own. And that's where, for me, I've tried to analyze it just like you, and it's way more legal mumbo jumbo than I like. But I think that's where it does a good job of bringing down the cost of housing.
Let's go to Senator Lucas for a minute, and then we'll come back.
Question I have for you. If you do this, all the assets of the developer, if he borrows the money through a bond company, everything in there has to be paid off to the bond company prior to the city or the county getting any new tax revenue from those houses?
No, so I think that the districts actually provide a way for cities and counties to see their tax digest increase, because you're increasing the value of the property. And in terms of what the district builds, that debt, the bond debt, is solely the district's responsibility. And that's very clear in a number of places in the bill, that can never be a responsibility of the state, cities, or counties. And the local governments are only responsible for the infrastructure that the district builds if they want it. So if a district builds sewer, water, and the county or the city would like to have those improvements, then the district can convey them debt-free to the city or county to operate, but only if the city or county want them. Otherwise, that continues to purely be a responsibility of the district to pay for the maintenance of it.
Senator Lucas, to be specific, and we did not cover this, it's incredibly important. The assessment that allows for the debt comes after any local taxes. The ad valorem taxes, anything is first, it changes nothing. This is not tax increment financing. It is an assessment that goes on the back end of any existing local taxation to make certain there is no existing tax digest impact.
So what I'm asking is then, how is the bond company paid if they, for instance, I'm a developer, I go in, say I'm gonna do 300 houses at a time. I got to look at the roads, the infrastructure, everything, put everything in. If it's water and sewer, I put those in for the thing. How do the bond folks get their money back? They have to have a way to get their money back. So I would assume that that had to come off the property, the sale of those properties that the developer has in order to pay the money.
Yes, Senator, there's an assessment that is placed on the individual properties, and that is collected on an annual basis, and that is what pays the principal and interest that are due on the bonds to the bondholders over the amortization period for the bond. So there is an assessment that's placed on the property that is collected, and those are the funds that are used to pay back the bondholders.
Senator Lucas, when you get your tax bill from your county, it says ad valorem tax bill for your land. At the bottom of that bill, there will be an additional fee for this infrastructure. This is the way I understand it. So your additional costs will be put on your tax bill, and if you have a mortgage on your home, your escrow account will cover that, just like they do today. So
And we made a change yesterday at GMA's recommendations later that specifically stated that assessment would come and be identified with the CDD and not the local government to make certain that there's a clear identification that assessment is allocated.
It'll be identified on the tax bill.
That's
that way.
correct.
Right, but
That's
it'll still be on the tax
Yeah,
bill.
no
and
question.
if you don't pay it, the tax commissioner would leverage
Yes, sir,
the
correct.
sale of your land to pay that debt. So, yes, sir.
Can I just ask, and I know that this is probably very property specific, but you take a broad brush across Florida, what's an average payment that a homeowner is making that lives in a community development district?
I know John has some examples here from villages.
Senator, if you have this sheet, and I pulled this off the website of the villages, so that's where I'm coming from in terms of my facts. From the low 200s, it'd be $129 a month. From the low 300s, $230 a month. From the 270s.
These are price points of homes, or what?
Yes, sir. Forgive me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it escalates up from there. But the first price point that they advertised, a home in the low 200s, $129 a month.
Okay.
It sounds like a alternative approach to impact fees for schools that we currently aren't allowed to collect. Is there some language that y'all would feel comfortable with if we could get Senator Dolezal and Senator Ginn to work on that over the weekend that would allow the school systems to have a seat at the table on those? Because honestly, if you had a 5,000 home subdivision in any county in Georgia, there's going to be a huge impact to the school system. So, and rightly so, they should have some say in allowing something like that in a community.
Leader, I was thinking exactly the same thing. I mean, we have notice to many impacted components of government. It seems appropriate that we have notice and a conversation in the petitioning process with the school system, school board, to make certain there's clarity around what the impact is and if there's a manner in which we can remediate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was noodling that in my head. I wonder if the petition needs to go to both entities. That way the school board has a seat at the table and the ability to negotiate such that this money doesn't just go to water, sewer, and roads.
Right.
That would be my concern.
But only to the extent that it impacts their school
Because I
district,
thought,
right?
right.
Senator Dolezal, did you get this handout that kind of goes through line by line in your packet?
I may have. We
He,
got the
he
package.
just got handed that folder,
If,
so.
if you look on the bottom of the second page, it allows for the following types of infrastructure to be built by a CDD. It's everything from stormwater, you look through that list, and then at the top of the next page, we go on over to public schools, fire station, trucks, even the pest control. I mean, you know, there's things that can be done.
I get that, and they mentioned that, but my concern is that if you're forming this and you only have to negotiate with the county, why is the county going to have to build a school?
He makes a valid point.
Yeah, and I get it.
So let me ask you this: instead of building the school inside that development, can that also allow for some type of fee or payment to the local district to expand the current school? Maybe it's a block away or a mile away, instead of having to build a standalone school inside that development. I'm looking for a way to help
Does
for
it
South
have to be
counties and the
contiguous?
other counties that
Does
are
the
growing
property
so
have to
fast.
be contiguous?
There is authority to provide for public improvements outside the district's boundaries if they're necessary as a function of the development within the
See,
boundaries.
I think that's got some promise to it.
And
Senator
typically what I've
Dolezal,
seen,
don't you?
senators, is the district's not paying for an entire new school, but the district contributes.
Right.
You know, I've
That's
seen
right.
that with fire stations, for example. The district
Okay.
doesn't build the whole fire station, but it contributes enough money to buy, fire trucks, right? Or contributes towards the construction in agreement with the other governmental entities.
And of course, the deal is that you're building the tax digest in your community, and so some of those typical costs that you're going to have are going to go to, okay, who's going to staff? Building of fire trucks. I watched in Forsyth County, for example, they had volunteer firemen up until way more recent than you would ever imagine. And they did a great job of capital funding for that, but they relied on volunteers. We all know that the real expense in running fire stations is the personnel. So that's where, as this development continues, that tax base is being built, and that's where you're covering the cost for operation.
To me,
And
this has more potential to it than current law for impact fees, because the new growth will be paying for it in bigger projects. And so I think this has a lot of potential if we can get the language worked out.
Yes, sir. Happy to do so.
What do you think, Senator Dolezal?
I just need to noodle on it. This is the first I've really had a chance to unpack this. So
Okay.
my
Well,
wheels are spinning.
we're running out of time before crossover. You made some changes to this bill overnight.
We sat down yesterday with ACCG, GMA, and got those to Legislative Council this morning. I got some comments from Neil Herring. I shared those with Mr. Watson, and we'll be looking at those over the weekend and trying to continue to refine the process. And that's where, for me, I appreciate the school board needs to be sitting at the table.
We need to work on this over the weekend. If you can put together some additional language that'll address his concerns on the school, and then try to put the sub together.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind if I jump in.
Sure.
Forget schools for a second. Parks and Rec, 911, libraries, fire, roads are currently allotted areas you can levy impact fees for under the Development Impact Fee Act in the state of Georgia. The purpose of those is to provide local government with the pro rata share of funding that it's going to cost for capital improvements to offset the cost of the new development. This, I think, is a different funding mechanism that is designed for the developer to pay for some of the things that they would have to. Counties aren't paying to build the roads right now in new development. Right. So this is to help offset the cost of, or sewer. This is to help offset the cost of the developer doing that. I think that this could be a sidecar to impact fees, and perhaps they could leverage the debt to actually pay the impact fees. But I don't think that this replaces the need for the impact fees, because I think, does that make sense?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not in lieu of, it's an additional tool that you can use for mega projects.
But this could be something that if you did have, you're bringing a project like this in and you're going to get hit with school impact fees, road impact fees, 911, library, parks and rec, you might say, all right, we need to bond $10 million, $20 million to pay these impact
That's right.
fees. We're going to levy the payback of that fee on the homeowners who move in, which is where that cost should be borne
That's
anyway.
correct.
Is that fair?
That's right.
Are you tracking with that?
Yes, Senator, and we deal with impact fees in Florida with these kind of districts too, where the districts are funding the infrastructure that the impact fees otherwise would, and that's worked out with the local governments.
Yeah.
And just so that Senator Lucas and Senator Doles all know that the yesterday we had a handout. I hope it's in your sheets. There you'll see a letter that where the Georgia Chamber is supportive of the language. You had testimony yesterday from the Council for Quality Growth. You had ACCG and GMA both in favor of the bill, and this is not the newest of concepts in Georgia. It was just actually went through the legislative process back in the 2007 year. So
Thank goodness it failed then, right?
We're perfecting it, Senator.
Well, and honestly, we need to remind people, this is not a tax abatement. This is not any kind of incentive. We're not giving away state funds on this. It's not bond for title like we do with typical development authority projects. So we need to make sure the messaging on this going forward is that the developers are going to pay 100% of the cost, but they're going to spread it out over a life of 10, 20, or 30 years. It's going to be paid for by the people who own the property.
And
Is
the purpose of
correct?
the purpose of the constitutional amendment creates a political subdivision, but then also puts armor, Teflon, whatever we
Right.
want to call it, on the local tax digest,
Right.
such that this can never pierce that.
And you're not asking for tax abatements on any of this equipment, infrastructure investment, or property or anything?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Thank
it'll
you.
actually increase the value to the
Gotcha.
county.
Mr. Chairman, I think the other thing I would point out is a difference. Chairman Ginn's carrying that House Bill 260 or 206 or whatever. This, as I understand it, a difference between this bill and that bill is that this bill would not impact the bonding capacity of the municipality.
Correct.
Good point.
100%.
Correct.
So there is no backstop to which Joe Sixpack gets stuck with the.
And that's
Yeah.
in the
Correct.
CA. That language.
That's why you need that.
Yes.
Yeah. I know that some of the anxiety is that you're with this bill, if we're not done otherwise, would be that you're leveraging the good faith and credit of the county
Yes, sir.
or
Correct.
city as opposed to.
That's exactly right.
I think this has been a helpful discussion. Any other comments? Any questions from the committee members? Madam Leader, do you have anything today? We talked a little bit yesterday. Feel more comfortable with it? I think in the interest of time, we need to turn these gentlemen loose to try to work on some more language to satisfy the comments that were made here today. But we need to roll this back to the full committee.
Mr.
for
Chairman, what
next
would get me
week.
really comfortable with this is if we did look at it tying school impact fees in as a part of this,
Okay.
such that, because right now,
Only for these what do you call them, community development districts, CDDs, not every county. You're not going to try to marry impact fees statewide.
well, I've got a
on this.
bill that's floating out there that for fast growing developments would contemplate that.
Uh-huh.
So I don't,
You think
I don't know.
You think it'll be germane?
I don't even know what title it's in to be.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't say that in the
I don't
microphone,
either.
but I don't know what title my bill's.
Do you have time over the weekend if they call you on some of this
Yeah, I guess. I do.
with Senator again?
We can wait till Monday, Senator. We can put our heads together.
I think you just need to get ledge council
Well-
to start drafting it today, because they'll be working all weekend, I'm assuming, but I don't see Sean Marie in here, but
Guys, one last
normally they work all weekend. Go ahead.
What other states have implemented this besides Florida, or some form?
There are, Senator, there should be in your folder, in the southern states, the only existing southern states that don't have something similar to this are Tennessee and Georgia. Nationally, there are 27 states that have something that is akin to this. They are not an exact replica. We are modeling off of Florida. However, again, Texas, Mississippi, the southeast, with the exception of Georgia and Tennessee, 27 nationally. And the Florida statute, that's the map, I think. I don't know if Chairman Dolezal, this statute was 1980 actually was when it went into Florida, so rather long in tooth in terms of this process.
I know that as we've dealt with development, I mentioned this earlier, in Forsyth County in particular, and Senator Gucci used to represent part of that district.
Yes.
Part of what we've lamented is that you don't see the larger master planned communities like you do see in Florida. You referenced the villages, but there's dozens of them down there that are half the size of the villages. They're still where you have, where schools are contemplating the overall design, because we just go build a one-off 100-acre development, you don't have the ability to really think about what's going in around it. I don't know how much of Florida having more of those is because of this, but that is, I'm thinking that it could be a piece of the puzzle as to why Florida has had more of those larger master plan developments. Do you have any insight as to why else Florida has had that?
Two things. I think that districts, these kind of districts can help play a role because it provides a means of figuring out how you're going to finance large-scale master infrastructure, right? Which is a serious impediment if you're a developer. Is that something you're going to take on? That's not that easy to do. The other difference would just potentially be in the development entitlement, land use and zoning process between the states. And I don't know the details of that in and out. That's not what this is, right? We aren't trying to interfere with however zoning land use works. This is just there to help finance that public infrastructure component when you have a larger scale development. But I do think it helps make that kind of master planning and that large scale sort of infrastructure possible by providing a potential means and tool to do it.
All right. Let me, if there's no other questions from the committee, let's see if there's any other comments from the audience. Everyone was heard from yesterday that signed up. Does anyone else in the audience want to voice an opinion one way or the other? Okay. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I'd hope that we can move this to the full committee today, have a vote, and
we'll take a motion from the committee at this time. There seems to be three options. You can make a motion to recommend it to committee. You can make a motion to not recommend it committee, or make a motion to not have an opinion either way. So, but I do believe
you need a motion to not have an opinion.
But no, but I do believe that if we can recommend it with the changes that have been discussed yesterday and today, the comments, you've made those changes already.
Yes, sir.
The master plan requirement is in the new sub, so that's important. I think that's pretty much what's going to happen anyway. I don't think any developer would come to a county asking for such a large development to be brought into a county without a master plan first. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I mean,
So-
you guys are comfortable.
But
Jim, you saw.
that was a GMA request. The master plan language is good with GMA? Okay, all right. So we just need to
I didn't want to
work.
speak on behalf of Jim.
If we can't get, I think if we can't get the language right on the school portion of it, that makes it harder to pass out of committee. So you know what you're up against. I think you need to work with Senator Dolezal and between now and Monday, get the language to where he's comfortable with it. And I think it's a good opportunity, to be honest with you, to involve the schools early in the process.
We'll have to.
Yes, sir. Because of, yeah, these projects,
You don't know whether they got property already owned.
That's
or
right.
How they gonna zone it.
That's right.
And how far the school will be from the residence.
that's right. So not just to build the school inside the development, but whatever that impact is to that, whatever school is going to service that area. So does that make sense? Y'all good with that? So does anyone want to make a motion with conditions?
I move we do it with conditions, but the school has to be involved, cause basically they gotta know how many students.
Correct.
And what the impact gonna be on the Board of Education.
Okay. So that'll be in a new sub that'll have to be presented to the committee.
we'll get
next
that
week.
to committee.
All right, so that's a motion from Senator Lucas. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Senator Dolezal. Any other discussion? I hear none. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right. You're opposed? Still a little hesitant, but open-minded? I understand. You're right. We should have the full bill ready, but this is a subcommittee that has no legal action. We're just making a recommendation to we think the idea is good, the concept's good. Let's make sure the wording gets nailed down and everyone's comfortable. And we'll all be at the table next week to discuss it further. That's right. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, thank y'all. I think we have a direction and we're moving forward. Thank y'all for being here and have a good weekend. See you
Thank
Tuesday. Frank, again, the solution here is to communicate with that gentleman right there. So work with Dolezal over the weekend.
We're on it.